The crew of the Starlight Voyager had never expected their routine mission to end in disaster. Space exploration, they had learned, was full of dangers, but nothing prepared them for what they were about to encounter. The mission was simple enough. Survey a recently discovered uncharted area of the galaxy. But as the ship drifted deeper into the unknown, a sense of unease crept over the crew. Captain Mara Grant stood at the bridge, scanning the monitors. Her sharp eyes studied the readings, but everything seemed calm. The deep silence of space felt almost oppressive. There was no sign of life, no unusual signals, just the steady hum of the ship's engines. She was about to call off the survey and return to known space when the console in front of her beeped, breaking the silence. "Captain, I'm detecting something," reported Lieutenant Markson, the ship's communications officer. His voice was steady, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his tone. Mara leaned forward. "What kind of signal?" she asked. "It's faint, a low-frequency pulse," Markson replied. "Almost like a beacon, but it's not human." The word "not human" hung in the air for a moment. The crew was used to encountering alien signals, but this was different. A beacon. It seemed harmless enough, but the last thing they wanted was to attract unwanted attention. Mara paused for a second, her hand hovering over the command console. "Should we investigate?" asked Markson, his eyes fixed on the screen. Mara thought for a moment. The pulse was strange, and curiosity tugged at her. They had come this far, but every instinct screamed to turn back. There was no telling what kind of species could be out here, and the crew knew the galaxy was full of dangerous surprises. "We'll go closer," she decided, her voice firm. "But no one gets too close until we understand more. Helm, set a course for the source of the signal." The ship slowly altered its course, moving towards the coordinates Markson had pinpointed. The deep void outside the ship's windows seemed even darker now, as if it were closing in on them. No one spoke as they approached the signal's origin. The usual chatter that filled the bridge had disappeared, replaced by a tense silence. Then the signal grew stronger. It wasn't just a pulse anymore, it was a steady, rhythmic thrum. Something was out there, but what, and why now? The Starlight. Voyager drifted closer to the source, its sensors picking up strange readings. The beacon was coming from an uncharted asteroid belt, an area that had been avoided by explorers for years. The asteroid field was dense and unpredictable, but the signal was strong, almost as if it was calling them in. As the ship neared the heart of the asteroid belt, a strange shape appeared on the radar. It was huge, far larger than anything the crew had ever seen. It wasn't a planet or an asteroid. It was ... something else. A massive, ancient-looking structure. Its surface was jagged, scarred by what appeared to be battle damage, yet it pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly glow. Mara's breath caught in her throat as she studied the readings. The structure was not just alien, it was ancient. Thousands of years old, at least. It didn't belong here. But how had it survived all this time, alone in the void of space? And why had it sent out a signal now? "Captain, I'm detecting something else," Markson spoke up, his voice now laced with concern. "There are signatures, life signs, but they're not human, and they're moving." The words sent a chill down Mara's spine. The beacon wasn't a call for help. It was a trap. Before she could issue any orders, a loud, deafening noise rattled the ship. The lights flickered, and the crew felt the ship shudder violently. It was as if something had struck them, but there was nothing on the radar. The ship steadied, but the tension on the bridge was palpable. The silence returned, but it was different now. Heavy, threatening. "Status report," Mara barked. "Nothing." "On sensors," Captain Markson replied, still trying to make sense of the readings. But something hit us. It was like a shockwave, something powerful. Mara frowned. They were too far from any known space station for a natural anomaly to cause something like that. It didn't make sense. What had they just encountered? Then, the ship's external cameras caught something on the horizon shapes, moving against the backdrop of the stars. Hundreds of them. Ships. Alien ships. Unlike anything the crew had ever seen. They were massive, with sleek, terrifying designs that seemed to shimmer in the dark. They were closing in on the Starlight Voyager, and fast. "Captain, we need to leave now," Markson urged, his voice filled with fear. The alien ships were too close now, but it was too late. The ships moved with terrifying precision, their weapons powering up as they surrounded the Starlight Voyager. The crew was trapped. There was no escape. Mara's mind raced. This was it. The crew had unknowingly declared war on a species far beyond their understanding. The Zarkorians, the galaxy's deadliest species, and they were about to face the consequences. The final thought that passed through Mara's mind as the enemy ships closed in on them was simple. Could they survive? The answer, she feared, was no. Asterisk, as the Starlight Voyager floated motionless, encircled by the dark, menacing ships, Mara Grant's thoughts raced. It felt as if the universe itself had conspired against them. For the first time in her career, she was unsure of what to do. Their fate was no longer in their hands. The Zarkorians had arrived, and with them a promise of swift, merciless retribution. The crew stood frozen in their seats, staring at the external monitors. The ships, dark and sinister, shimmered in the vacuum of space. Each one appeared like a predator circling its prey. The sheer size and power of the vessels were terrifying. They resembled massive war machines, their sharp angles and sleek surfaces built for one purpose only, to destroy. But it was not just their size that made them fearsome. It was the reputation they carried, the reputation that had turned them into legends of terror across the galaxy. No one had ever survived an encounter with the Zarkorians and lived to tell the tale. "Lieutenant," Markson's voice broke the silence. "Captain, they're charging weapons." His eyes were wide with fear, yet his hands remained steady on the controls. Mara didn't respond immediately. She couldn't afford to show weakness in front of her crew, but inside, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. How could they have been so foolish? The beacon had been a signaler trap, and now they had walked right into it. The crew had unwittingly declared war on a species that did not know mercy. "Captain, what do we do?" asked Ensign Jada, her voice trembling slightly. She was a rookie, having just joined the crew a few months ago, and now she was facing her worst nightmare. Mara clenched her jaw, looking out of the bridge's window. The Zarkorian ships hovered just beyond the range of their weapons, as if toying with them. The anticipation of death was almost unbearable. For a moment, everything felt distant, as though time itself had slowed. Mara knew they couldn't fight their way out. The Starlight Voyager was nothing compared to the might of the Zarkorian fleet. Their only hope lay in something else, something that might buy them a few moments of life. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, she ordered, though her voice betrayed the uncertainty she felt. All shields up. Get ready to launch the decoys. We don't have a chance against them. Captain Markson spoke bluntly, but he wasn't wrong. Their weapons can pierce our shields without breaking a sweat. We won't survive long. Enough to reach any safe zone. Mara's heart sank as the truth hit her. There was no escape. They were trapped in the heart of a galaxy that had no room for mercy. She wasn't sure what had attracted the Zarkorians to them, but they weren't going to let them go. Not without making an example out of them. We don't need to escape, Mara said, her voice steadier now, though it carried an edge of desperation. She glanced at Markson. We need to communicate with them. The entire bridge fell silent, and every crew member exchanged confused glances. What do you mean, Captain? Markson asked. They have to listen to us, Mara said, her mind worry as she considered her options. We can't fight them, but maybe, maybe we can talk. Her words hung in the air, as if trying to escape into the void. It was a long shot, but what choice did they have? They couldn't outrun them, and they couldn't overpower them. All they could do was hope for a miracle. Mara turned to her communications officer. Get me a line to the lead ship. Open a channel. Markson hesitated. Captain, they might not respond to us at all. We've just do it, Lieutenant. Mara barked, cutting him off. She had to try. She had to do something. A few tense moments passed, and then Markson turned to face her, his expression grim. Channel open, Captain. Mara swallowed hard and stepped toward the com station, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on her. She wasn't sure what to expect. Her fingers hovered over the controls, but it wasn't fear she felt, it was determination. Whatever the outcome, they had to face it. This is Captain Mara Grant of the Starlight Voyager, a human vessel. She began, her voice calm but firm. We did not come here to cause conflict. We've made a mistake, but we request your mercy. Our people, before she could finish, the screen before her flickered, and a voice, cold and mechanical, interrupted her transmission. Human, the voice said, the tone of it as sharp as a blade. You have declared war on the Zarkorian Empire. There is no room for mercy. You will be destroyed, as all who defy us will be. Mara's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She wasn't done yet. I understand, but you've made a grave mistake in assuming we are weak. We are the descendants of Earth, a species that has fought overwhelming odds. You underestimate us if you think this is the end. The voice on the other side of the channel remained silent for a long moment, as though weighing her words. Then, with chilling finality, it spoke again. You are a fool, Captain. Your species is nothing. The Zarkorian Empire will wipe you from existence, and your foolishness will be remembered as the beginning of your extinction. The communication cut off abruptly, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The cold realization that they had no bargaining power, no backup, sank in. The Zarkorians had made their decision. Mara turned to face her crew, the heavy weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. Get ready for battle, she said, her voice unyielding. We fight for survival, for humanity. She didn't know if they would win. But one thing was certain, they were going to show the Zarkorians that humanity wasn't as easy to crush as they thought. The Starlight Voyager trembled under the power of the Zarkorian fleet's weapons, but it held together for now. Captain Mara Grant stood tall at the bridge, her fists clenched around the armrests of her chair. Outside, the silent, suffocating void of space was lit by the flickering glow of Zarkorian ships, hovering with their weapons aimed at the Voyager. The moment of silence after the failed attempt at communication lingered like a thick fog. The bridge was tense, no one spoke. Everyone understood what had to happen next: fight or die. The hope that somehow they could resolve this without bloodshed had shattered. There would be no mercy. The Zarkorians made that clear. Captain Shields, holding at 45%. "We can't take much more of this," Markson reported, his voice strained with the weight of the situation. Mara didn't reply immediately. The ship was under heavy fire. Their shields were weakening fast, and she knew the Zarkorians would target the Starlight Voyager's weak spots soon. The Voyager was not designed for combat with fleets of this size and power. She had to make a decision, and it had to be fast. Lieutenant Markson, reroute all remaining power to the aft shields. She ordered, "We'll need to buy as much time as we can to plan our next move." A loud bang echoed through the ship as another hit struck. The lights flickered and alarms screamed from every direction. The crew braced themselves for what was to come. But Captain Mara Grant's mind was already working, analyzing, calculating the impossible. "Engage evasive maneuvers," she said, turning sharply to face her crew. "All hands, brace for impact. This is not just about survival anymore. We fight for the future of humanity. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Captain," Lieutenant Jada shouted, her voice fierce with determination. The Starlight Voyager lurched as it began its evasive dance. The Zarkorian ships, though far superior in size and firepower, were slow to react to the ship's sudden, unpredictable maneuvers. For a moment, it felt as though they might just have a chance. Every evasive twist was another heartbeat gained. Every second they stayed alive was a victory. "Captain, the alien ships are realigning," Markson called out urgently. "They're not letting us escape." Mara glanced at the viewscreen. The Zarkorian ships were closing in, but she had an idea something risky, but possibly their only chance. "We've got one shot at this. It's time to level the playing field." She turned to the weapons officer, Lieutenant Yara, who had been quiet, her hands busy at her station. "Lieutenant, you've got the green light. Fire the experimental weapon." Yara blinked at her in confusion. "Captain, that's untested." "It might not. I don't care about the risks, Lieutenant." Mara cut her off, her voice full of urgency. "We need to strike back." Now Yara nodded, her face set in grim determination. She punched a sequence into her console, and for a moment the ship seemed to go still. The hum of the engines faded, replaced by a low, eerie vibration that pulsed through the Starlight Voyager. Then, without warning, the experimental Wepona hybrid energy pulse designed to disrupt enemy shields fired. A beam of crackling light shot from the ship's bow, striking one of the lead Zarkorian ships. The result was immediate. The beam hit with a deafening crack, and the Zarkorian ship shuddered. For a brief, surreal moment, the ship seemed to flicker and distort, like a mirage in the vastness of space. Then, its shields collapsed, and explosions rang out across the hull. "Direct hit," Yara exclaimed, her voice filled with surprise and relief. "We've taken down one of their ships." The crew erupted into cheers, but Mara held up her hand for silence. It was a victory, but not one that would last long. The Zarkorians were quick to react. The remaining ships fired back with even more fury, their weapons far stronger than anything the Starlight Voyager had in its arsenal. Another explosion rocked the ship, and the hull creaked under the pressure, but the crew fought on, scrambling to defend their ship. The Voyager was damaged, but it wasn't dead yet. The Zarkorians retaliated with brutal precision, targeting their weakened shields and system controls. But with every assault, Mara's resolve hardened. Humanity had just landed the first blow in a war they had never expected to fight. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. We've shown them that we're not as weak as they think, Mara muttered to herself. Now we need to make them feel our wrath. Captain, I've got an incoming signal from the other side. Markson called. It's a message from the Zarkorians. Mara straightened, her eyes narrowing. Put it through. The screen flickered once more, and the chilling voice of the Zarkorian commander filled the bridge. Human, the voice said, cold and emotionless. You have made your mark, but it will be your last. You are now enemies of the Zarkorian Empire. No one survives this conflict. You will fall like all others before you. Mara's jaw tightened. The enemy's arrogance was clear, but the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. They had made their statement. They had shown that humanity would not roll over, that they would not bow to fear. We'll see about that, Mara said, her voice steely. We fight for our future. The communication cut off. The silence that followed felt almost deafening. But in that silence, the crew of the Starlight Voyager knew one thing for certain. They were not about to go down without a fight. They had just begun their counterstrike, and the Zarkorians would soon learn that humanity wasn't just a species to be wiped out. They were a force to be reckoned with. Asterisk, the Starlight Voyager drifted in the void, battered but not broken. The ship's hull groaned from the constant assault, and yet the crew remained resolute despite the looming threat of annihilation. The Zarkorian fleet had not pulled back, and their relentless pursuit continued. Every second felt like an eternity. Mara Grant stood at the bridge, hands clenched behind her back, eyes fixed on the starfield ahead. We've held them off, Markson reported, his voice low but filled with a cautious optimism. For now, Mara repeated, her tone hard. She turned to face him. But now won't be enough. We need a plan. Something more than just holding on. The crew was exhausted, their nerves stretched thin, but they were alive, and that was something Mara clung to. She knew they couldn't keep dodging death forever, though. The Starlight Voyager was no warship. Their weapons were limited, and their shields were almost depleted. They needed something bigger, something beyond just survival. Lieutenant Yara had been scanning the nearby space anomalies since the attack had begun. She'd been quiet, working with a sense of urgency that had not gone unnoticed by the crew. Finally, after what felt like hours, she spoke. "Captain," she said, her voice shaky but determined, "I think I've found something. There's a derelict station not far from here, just beyond the asteroid belt. It's old, very old." Mara's heart skipped a beat. A station. "Is it operational?" "No," Yara said. "It's been abandoned for centuries. But it might contain something useful. Technology, weapons, anything that could give us an edge." Mara's mind raced. A derelict station. It was a long shot, but it might just be their best chance. The Zarkorians were closing in, and without reinforcements, they'd be trapped. "How far?" Mara asked, narrowing her eyes. "Not far. A few hours at most," Yara replied. Mara made a snap decision. Set course for the station. "All hands, brace for another jump. If this works, we'll be fighting with something other than desperation." The crew worked quickly, adjusting their course and preparing for the jump. The Starlight Voyager surged forward, the ship's engines flaring as they shot through the asteroid belt. The tension in the air was palpable. The crew was exhausted, but there was a new energy in the air. This was their chance. maybe their only chance. As the ship neared the derelict station, the eerie silence of space seemed to press down on them. The station, hidden among the floating debris of ancient ships and forgotten technology, loomed like a forgotten ghost of the galaxy's past. It was an ancient structure, its surface covered in rust and decay, a silent testament to time's relentless march. But as the Starlight Voyager approached, an unexpected signal blipped onto the radar, a faint distress signal coming from within the station. Someone nor something was alive inside, Captain. I'm getting a signal from inside the station, Markson said, his fingers flying over the controls. It's not automated. Someone's still there. Mara turned to face her crew, her eyes hard. This was a twist none of them had expected. Who could still be alive in this abandoned place? And what did they want? It was a risk, but what choice did they have? They couldn't afford to leave without searching. Keep your weapons ready, Mara ordered, her voice low and serious. We don't know what we're walking into. The Starlight Voyager docked with the station, its hull scraping against the station's rusty exterior. The doors hissed open, and the crew moved cautiously into the dark, empty corridors. The station's interior was a maze of rusting walls and forgotten technology. There were signs of old life personal belongings scattered in abandoned rooms. Faded signs on the walls, but no people. Then, as they ventured deeper into the station, they heard it. The sound of movement. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed down the halls. Stay sharp, Mara whispered, her hand on her weapon. The crew's hearts pounded in their chests as they slowly followed the sound. The dim lights flickered overhead as they rounded a corner, and then they saw it. A figure stood at the end of the hall, cloaked in shadow. It was tall, humanoid, but clearly not human. The being stepped forward into the flickering light, revealing its angular features and gleaming eyes. Its skin was an unusual shade of blue, with strange markings etched into its body. The figure did not speak, but raised its hand, gesturing for them to follow. Who are you? Mara asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The figure tilted its head, as if considering her question. Then it spoke in a voice that was both ancient and chilling. I am a remnant, a relic of a time long gone, and I have been waiting for you. A chill ran down Mara's spine. There was something in the figure's eyes, something that suggested it knew exactly what had happened, what was coming, and how it all tied together. I can help you, the figure continued, its voice carrying an eerie calm. But first, you must prove your worth. The galaxy is not what it seems. The Zarkorians are not your true enemy. The war you are about to face is only the beginning. The future of your people depends on the choices you make now. The figure's words hung in the air, heavy with implication. It was clear this wasn't just a random encounter. It wasn't a coincidence. This being had been waiting for humanity, waiting for them to arrive at this point in history. Mara felt the weight of the situation crash over her. The Zark were a threat, yes, but there was something even bigger lurking in the shadows. Something the figure knew. Help us, Mara said, her voice steady but with an underlying desperation. Tell us what we need to do. The figure stepped closer, its gaze locking with hers. You must understand one thing. The Zarkorians are only pawns in a larger game. A game that will decide the fate of the galaxy, but only if you are willing to pay the price. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The road ahead was uncertain, but the flicker of hope, the glimmer of something that could turn the tide, was finally in their reach. And with that, the future of humanity hung in the balance. The Starlight Voyager hummed quietly in the dark, orbiting the forgotten station. The crew had spent hours listening to the enigmatic figure's words, trying to piece together the fragmented truth. It wasn't easy to digest, especially not after everything they had been through. But one thing was clear: humanity was caught in the middle of something far larger than a simple war with the Zarkorians. The being had called itself an ancient relic, a remnant of a long-lost civilization that once thrived in the galaxy. It had waited in this desolate corner of space for eons, anticipating the arrival of someone who could challenge the greater threat, the Ascendants. The Ascendants were an ancient race, older and far more powerful than the Zarkorians, and their return signaled the start of a war that would reshape the galaxy forever. "We are nothing but pawns in their game," Aurelios had explained, his eyes glowing with a soft, otherworldly light. "The Zarkorians are the first wave. The Ascendants will come next, more powerful, more dangerous, and humanity, you are the key." Mara felt a chill grip her heart. The key? What could they possibly do against such ancient forces? But she pushed the doubt aside. Humanity had always thrived on the edge of desperation. She had to believe they could fight back. The crew had made a decision. They would stand and fight not just for their survival, but for the survival of every species in the galaxy that still had a chance to live in peace. But to do that, they needed more than just a fight. They needed to make their stand count. Aurelios had shown them the ancient technology hidden within the station, technology that had once been wielded by a civilization that had held the galaxy in balance. Among the artifacts was a weapon, an ancient arcane device that could alter the fabric of space itself. It was dangerous, and it required someone who understood it to activate it, and so Mara had volunteered. "I'll do it," she had said, her voice resolute. "Humanity isn't just going to survive, we're going to change the tide of this war." Now, standing on the bridge of the Starlight Voyager, she stared out at the vast emptiness. The Zarkorian fleet had repositioned itself in a tight formation, their weapons powered up, ready to finish what they had started. They thought they had humanity cornered, that they could crush them with ease. But they had no idea what was coming. Captain Markson called out, his voice tense. "The Zarkorian fleet is closing in. We're running out of time." Mara turned to him, her face cold, the weight of what was about to happen sinking in. We fight to the end." The crew stood in silence, each of them understanding the gravity of the decision. They weren't just defending a ship anymore, they were defending the future. They were facing an enemy that had wiped out civilizations and bent the galaxy to their will. And the Starlight Voyager, battered and scarred, was about to take the fight to them. "Activate the system," Mara ordered. "Engage the weapon." Lieutenant Yara nodded and began to work quickly, her hands flying over the console. The ship's engines began to hum louder, the air around them vibrating with the immense energy that was building up. The crew could feel the tension in the room, the anticipation of the unknown. "Weapon systems are online," Captain Yara reported, her voice strained but determined. "We're ready." Mara's breath caught in her chest as the reality of what they were about to do set in. This weapon, this ancient, untested technology, could either turn the tide of the war or destroy them all. There was no turning back now. The Zarkorian fleet was in range. They were just moments away from opening fire. "Fire," Mara commanded. The ship trembled as the weapon discharged. A blinding beam of energy shot out from the Starlight Voyager, striking the closest Zarkorian ship. The beam didn't just hit, it ripped through it. The Zarkorian ship's hull cracked open, as if reality itself had torn apart in an instant. The shockwave from the explosion rippled through space, sending debris scattering in every direction. The rest of the Zarkorian fleet hesitated, their ships momentarily thrown into chaos. Mara could see it on the view screen, their perfect formation breaking apart, their ships scrambling to regroup. "We've done it," Lieutenant Yara shouted, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's working." But the victory was short-lived. The Zarkorians, though stunned, quickly regained their composure. Their remaining ships surged forward, their weapons charged to full power. It was clear they were angry, and they would not back down. The Starlight Voyager's hull groaned as another volley of Zarkorian fire slammed into the ship. Sparks flew from consoles, and alarms blared across the bridge. The ship's shields flickered, barely holding. The damage was severe, but the crew kept fighting. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Mara yelled, her heart pounding. "We can't take another hit like that." As the Voyager darted and weaved through the Zarkorian fire, Mara's mind raced. They had the weapon, they had the edge, but it wouldn't be enough unless they could keep fighting. Unless they could make the Zarkorians fear them. Then something unexpected happened. A massive explosion erupted from the heart of the Zarkorian fleet. One ship, its sleek, terrifying form tumbled into space, breaking apart under the force of the energy weapon. The rest of the fleet faltered, some ships veering off course in confusion, others firing on each other.